Hello, is it working? How's it going? So yeah, hope this setup is much better than the previous setups for sure. Definitely went back and watched some of the other streams, and I definitely noticed the quality wasn't the best. So trying out some different things. So I really hope that this setup is a lot cleaner than the previous couple of reviews. But anyway, what's up? How's it going? Yeah, so really looking forward to talking about this one. Definitely some unexpected twists and turns here for sure. Really enjoyed this episode, absolutely. Even though it was definitely a plot setup episode, definitely a huge unexpected twist at the end of Act 3 that I did not see coming whatsoever, that I absolutely loved in this episode for sure. So, yeah, it's getting right into it, Joseph, kind of to jump ahead. I definitely didn't wonder. I didn't know what Kim was saying at the very end. To jump ahead to the literally the last scene of this episode where she said to Saul, "Just please don't move the toilet." I wasn't sure what that meant. So if someone could enlighten me on that one, but yeah, this was an unbelievable episode, so, gonna really kind of get into it here, so, by the way, if this quality of the stream, if it's noticeable, definitely, let me know for sure with the thumbs up thing, so, I think this should be a lot better, hopefully, this system is hopefully much cleaner than the other ones. The other one I saw was pretty laggy last time, so, hopefully, this one's a lot cleaner, but, yeah, so, just kinda getting into it initially, so very a cold opening scene here, didn't know what was going on initially, kind of a lot of interesting POV shots here with the bicycle and everything. And I'm like, what is going on here? Is this a flashback? I mean, I had a lot of thoughts going on. And then you sort of see these two people, and it definitely sort of seemed like a husband and wife tandem that were sort of riding the bikes. I definitely thought this was Gus Fring's neighborhood for sure, just based on everything that was teased to us about this episode. But definitely did not expect the sort of unexpected twist here, wherein following this sort of casual conversation between these two characters, just sort of discussing, what's happening in the neighborhood. They then go to their what was supposed to be home, and then all of a sudden we see them in the kitchen, sort of talking, and then we see a man with a gun, and we see sort of other men, and they're just sort of hanging out, and we're just like, what in the world is this? But again, it wasn't too subtle, I think, when, this episode was when the cold opening scene ended, because the camera then panned to the, very intricate setup of Gus Fring's sort of, surveillance system that we saw in this cold opening scene that also comes into play, at the end of this episode. So, yeah, really great setup scene here, definitely setting up the story behind, what sort of extreme measures Gus is taking despite the assurance from the cartel that was implied and outwardly stated in the description for this episode. But yeah, so that kind of sets up where the story of Gus Fring goes. And what's pretty interesting about this cold opening scene is we do not see the plot of Gus Fring happen until the very last act. Of course, the very end of Act 3 is a setup and sort of, a what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of transfer. That's a sort of it sort of sets up the sort of the continuation into the Gus storyline. But yeah, very kind of cool opening scene here for sure that I, was definitely sort of expecting, but definitely didn't expect this sort of iteration of it. So I thought that was pretty cool for sure. But anyway, getting into it, the first act of this episode then picks up with the continuation of the Howard undermining Howard Hamlin's storyline. Again, a lot of POV shots here for sure. Kind of interesting to see the Howard Hamlin's Jaguar, but great scene here. It's definitely kind of awesome to sort of see the excuse me, I have frog in my throat, but definitely sort of awesome to see the sort of plan come into full effect here of what exactly they were trying to do against Howard Hamlin. So pretty amazing scene here for sure. Very kind of, you know, opportunistic of them for sure. Sort of I was wondering, how they would know that, excuse me, I was wondering how they would know, like, they would have enough time. Like, how could they get Howard Hamlin's car for enough time? How would they know when he'd be somewhere for a long enough time? But they definitely used the opportunity of him going to his therapy session, which is actually a callback to season 4 of Better Call Saul, where after the sort of insomnia that Howard was suffering following the death of Chuck that season, when Saul met him in the men's room at the Bernalillo County Courthouse, Saul said to him, maybe Howard, you should go see a therapist or something. And he said he was seeing one. So it's definitely a sort of callback to that. So I thought that was really interesting for sure. I really sort of enjoyed that callback and that sort of subtle reference from season 4 Breaking Bad. But anyway, so yeah, following Howard's, without trying to get bogged down too many details here, to see this the plan come into full effect here with, I was wondering how Wendy exactly would factor into the storyline, but it was revealed to us that Jimmy effectively stole Howard's car and picked up Wendy from the Crystal Palace and sort of pushed her out of his car right in front of Clifford Maine. The ruse being set up that Kim wanted to have a business meeting with him to sort of discuss her pro bono practice. And Clifford took I guess the meeting on somewhat false pretenses. I mean, it was sort of gray because Kim definitely was bono practice, but the whole point was to get Cliff out in that open setting so he would see what appeared to look exactly like Howard Hamlin push this woman out of his car with this woman screaming at Howard, in air quotes saying, "You owe me money." Clifford being absolutely besides himself, can't believe what he just saw with the was saying to Kim, "Was that Howard?" And again, really funny here just to see Saul dressed up as Howard with that spray tan and everything, with I think he had like some sort of like film on his teeth to make them more white. He had the hair done, and the spray tan was just so over the top. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And the plan it seemed to go off without a hitch, but of course, that very last scene in this episode, in this opening act, excuse me, when someone moves the cone for the patient parking, and Saul's besides himself, saying, who moves the cone? And you're wondering what he's going to do here. I'm like, is he going to try to push the car? But of course, he just moves the patient parking sign that Howard parked in front of. And I guess Howard was just so, I don't know, probably introspective, because he just came from a therapy session. So he wasn't even thinking about the fact that his car was actually in the sort of, I don't even know where that area is, like the sort of, median where you're not supposed to park. He didn't even realize. He was just so sort of probably introspective and thinking about what he spoke about with his therapist that he didn't even consider, the fact that someone stole his car. So the plan seemed like it went off without a hitch, just seeing Saul rip up that patient parking sign and then put it down, it was just absolutely unbelievable. And then when we see the sign fall down at the end, I mean, I thought that was just absolutely hilarious. Definitely wasn't expecting that much comedy involved in this opening act here of this episode, but I really enjoyed this scene. Again, definitely sets up the plot development and the sort of conversations that ensue following this. Again, I kind of glanced over it, but definitely cool to see the Breaking Bad character Wendy reprised in the plot of Better Call Saul as well. Very cool to see that for sure. A character we first saw all the way back in season 1 of Breaking Bad. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the very first time we saw her, she was speaking to none other than Hank Schrader and Walter Jr. And again, that's a whole another tangent here about the sort of, Walter White telling his wife that he smokes marijuana, and Hank then trying to scare Walter Jr. straight because Skylar confides in Marie, and Marie thinks she's talking about Walter Jr. and not Walter White. So yeah, it was kind of kind of a crazy kind of storyline there. But then to see that sort of character reprised, I mean, and we also saw that as well with Spooge too. So it was pretty amazing. And then immediately after talking with them, she then services Jesse, to put it bluntly. So yeah, kind of very interesting to see Wendy in this episode as well. Again, it wasn't she didn't have as prominent of a role as I thought she would. Maybe she will in the episodes to come. I'm not really sure, but yeah, just really kind of interesting to sort of see this backstory. And of course, I believe, was it in this scene as well, or was it in the next scene? Just to sort of check my notes here. But when after they kick Howard out of the car and they rip the sign out, no, it was in the was it the same act? I don't remember. No, it was the same act. Excuse me. So I'm getting ahead of myself here. Was that scene of him ripping out the post was not the last scene of the act? But then following the patient parking sign falling down, then we see the continuation of this act with Kim and Wendy in the parking lot of the Crystal Palace. And of course, Wendy thinks the two men in the car, are undercover cops because it looks just like them, unmarked American police cars sort of tailing them. And, Wendy thinking, they're, kind of, trying to hassle her for, what she does for a living. And Kim, of course, offering, her services, being this pro bono lawyer who's trying to help the sort of less fortunate of society, I'd say. And very much of a twist here when, it was kind of, revealed to us in the teasers leading up to this episode, but we see the sort of undercover car that Wendy thought was a cop car. It's when Kim leaves the Crystal Palace, follow Kim Wexler instead. And of course, when she looks in her rearview mirror, then the car peels off, thus ending Act 1. Again, I've talked about this in some of my previous videos, how on the surface, just everything has been going according to plan for Jimmy and Kim with this ruse against Howard Hamlin. And Jimmy alludes to it as much, when he says we're on a roll here later in this episode. So, really kind of, I really enjoyed this opening act here. A lot of comedy. The last episode with Nacho Varga was pretty damn dark. So, this is a drama, but it is definitely nice to have this sort of comedy interjected as well with this incredible dramas. So I really thought there were just some unbelievable comedic aspects of this, 1st act of this episode, which really sort of set up the rest of the episode for sure. So Yeah, Dan Carlson, the Kim and Mike scene was awesome. I agree. Definitely did not expect that. Kind of getting ahead of ourselves here, but I'm definitely looking forward to talking about that as well. Yeah, I agree, Frank, as well. The best, yeah, when that sign fell over, that was absolutely hilarious. When Saul just got out of there at the very last minute. So, yeah, Nick also, yeah, that Spooge and Saul conversation we did not get to see. It's kind of interesting. We never saw them converse. I'm not really sure why exactly that was displayed to us. Maybe it was just for the nature of just the advancement of the plot, and they didn't want to get bogged down in too many meetings and things of that nature. So, yeah, definitely curious. So, why they didn't show that scene. So, and it was definitely again kind of getting ahead of myself here, but definitely sort of just seeing Saul look at that office to finally rent at the very end of this episode, again the progress of the plot. We only have 9 episodes left of this series. It's got so bittersweet to even say, but yeah, again, getting ahead of myself here, but so yeah, after act 1, we then process into act number 2. And yeah, definitely a big plot development episode here for sure, with a lot of great twists and turns as well. But get ahead of myself here. I feel like there were a lot of commercials on in this episode for sure. So I'm just trying to going through these commercials. I really feel like it was a ton of commercials, but it is what it is. They gotta pay they gotta pay Vince Gilligan somehow. So, but anyway, so Act 2 of this episode then picks up at Jimmy and Kim's apartment, and we then see them Jimmy sort of telling Kim the story of the scene involving the sign falling over that we saw at the end of Act 1, and kind of just going over the details here. And then Kim proceeds to tell Saul about the meeting with Clifford Maine and how he went for it, her pro bono practice, even though that was kind of just, a way to kind of, make the ruse happen. She also had a legitimate meeting here with Clifford Maine as well. And with that pro bono practice, and we saw Clifford Maine speaking about, his own son with a drug addiction. And we really saw that, Kim's cause really sort of resonated with Clifford Maine here in this scene. So, basically saying how, because it's a pro bono practice, you're obviously going to need investors, I imagine, or people to make donations, I guess is the right term, to fund all this because, it's pro bono. There's no money. These clients aren't paying you. They can't afford this type of legal service. So, Clifford Maine definitely saying that he could be, I guess, someone who donates and is in behind Kim's sort of noble cause here. Again, you'd wonder what he'd think when he finds out that, Kim's been sort of scamming Howard Hamlin if he ever finds out. I'm sure he wouldn't feel very good about that for sure, despite the positivity he sees in what Kim's trying to do with her life with that pro bono practice. But anyway, after Kim telling Saul that, that's when Saul says, "Man, we're on a roll here." Kind of, it's true on the surface to Saul and Kim. I mean, besides, with Kim, of course, thinking that she's been followed, every single aspect of this plan has just been boom, 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 with the Kettlemans, with the planning of the baby powder in the locker room, with tying up the Kettlemans as loose ends, with stealing Howard's car keys. Everything has gone according to plan. So it is true what Saul's saying. Man, we're on a roll here. And Clifford Main's going to be someone who can donate to the pro bono practice. I mean, things are going great. But of course, then Kim Wexler, of course, brings up the anecdote that I discussed about, do you ever feel like you're being followed? Kind of, telling the exactly what I just talked about, Wendy and the undercover cop who was then following her. And Saul basically sort of, being very dismissive of this and assuring Kim, no one knows what we're doing except for us, so nothing to worry about here. So, that pretty much sums up the scene here for sure, just Kim just sort of, being somewhat worried here, kind of very suspicious of someone following them. That's not definitely according to the plan for sure. And Saul being very dismissive, definitely sort of, you know, I don't know if foreshadowing is the right word, but sort of foreshadows, what's to come for Kim Wexler and the sort of blissful ignorance that Saul gets to maintain as of the progression of the end of this episode. So very, very interesting setup scene here in Act 2. Then following this, man, the second scene in this act was unbelievable. I mean, I should have seen this coming in hindsight, but when we saw Saul Goodman back at the Bernalino County Courthouse after what we saw ADA Suzanne Erickson tell Kim Wexler about the fact they know that sort of they sort of insinuate that Saul aided and abetted Lalo, and just to sort of see the absolute cold shoulder here that everyone is giving Saul Goodman here in this scene, for basically kind of, turning his back on the law, kind of, even so, we see the sort of the people working the security, and we see the clerk who we first saw in season one of Breaking Bad, and we also see another person, I forgot her name exactly, who I believe Saul has said hello to many times at the Bernalillo County Courthouse. But then, of course, this scene finally culminates when Saul sees his, good friend, Deputy Director Oakley here, and again, Saul is really sort of, wondering why everyone's giving him the cold shoulder here. And finally, the sort of, conversation happens here where Oakley sort of calls him out about how, he understands, the lawyer client confidentiality and sort of, trying to advocate for your client. He really does. But sort of just saying what Saul did really crossed the line here. And he really just threw the sort of whole system under the bus, and sort of everyone who works sort of in the courthouse and works, in the, in favor of pursuit of the law, I guess, really sort of, threw that whole system under the bus to sort of, help some lowlife, some cartel sort of member, and really sort of seeing Jimmy sort of really cozying up more to the sort of criminality of being a lawyer as opposed to, someone who's truly advocating for, I suppose, justice or something along those lines. So, really interesting scene here for sure. And of course, Saul sort of doubling down here, basically saying, like, that's a lot of, those are a lot of, baseless accusations here. Prove it, even though it's all true. And of course, Oakley says there's knowing and there's, having very interesting setup scene here. Again, try not to get bogged down in too many details, but just really sort of interesting foreshadowing of just, what kind of lawyer Saul Goodman is, a person who really takes bribes, someone who really sort of, really kind of abuses the legal system for sure. And sort of really sort of, foreshadowing where Saul Goodman was in the plot of Breaking Bad compared to where he is right now. So definitely a sort of necessary scene that needed to happen. And it'll definitely be interesting to see the sort of cold shoulder that, everyone displayed to him here in this scene sort of continues over the course of this final season of Better Call Saul. But then this is the final scene of Act Two. We then see Kim having a meeting with her pro bono client at the El Camino restaurant. Again, sort of a subtle, I guess, sort of a subliminal message maybe to go watch El Camino or something like that. A shout out to El Camino or something to that effect. But we finally see the culmination of the scene where Kim sees the people outside of the restaurant watching her from their car, and she decides to confront them, basically saying she knows that, like, kind of saying, "Are you following me?" Basically, outright saying, "I know you're following me, you're tailing me, and if you don't tell me who you are, I'm going to call the cops." Of course, when this sort of threat is given to these people, they then leave. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was NoHo Hank there in the passenger seat from Barry. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I was kind of surprised to see that actor there. Kind of a cool shout out. Again, I wasn't sure if we saw that person working for Mike in a previous episode as well. I kind of recognized that man, who's someone who was sort of in Mike's crew in the past and the plot of Better Call Saul, if I'm not mistaken. So someone can definitely, someone can confirm that. I'll definitely have to go back and sort of look if that was the same character. Definitely sort of I wasn't expecting that climax to happen so early here, with Kim sort of confronting these people who she thought they were following her. And that was the end of Act Two here. And of course, this is definitely not the end of the whole story. And Kim's actions here in this episode and this act, excuse me, definitely set up, why we needed to have that interaction between Kim and Mike at the end of the third act of this episode. An unbelievable scene, in my opinion, for sure, that I really enjoyed. So, great act here for sure. Great scene here to culminate Act Two, where Kim sort of calls out the people who are, I guess, not doing such a subtle job tailing her, and that ends Act Two. So yeah, yeah. Then just Dallas. I think that was NoHo Hank. I'm pretty sure I wasn't expecting that. So never saw the guys that were working for Mike. Definitely not NoHo Hank, but I swear maybe maybe he just looks like someone else. I swear the guy driving we saw before. Maybe again a very sort of subtle sort of scene, maybe like a background actor, but I could be completely wrong about that. So but yeah, anyway, getting into Act Three here, definitely kind of cool shot here where we see, I believe it looks like the Civic Plaza. I wasn't sure if this was the Civic Plaza or maybe it was just outside the courthouse. But again, this is sort of further continuation of the sort of cold shoulder that everyone was giving to Saul Goodman here in Act Two, and we see him sort of eating lunch again with a lot of people who probably work at the courthouse or something to that effect. And everyone else, the tables are packed, everyone's intermingling and sort of having conversation. But of course, no one wants to sit with Saul, even though everywhere else is packed. And we even see two people approach him and they sit somewhere else at a completely packed table because they're definitely giving him the cold shoulder for what he did, for basically undermining and kind of, what's the right word here? Sort of lying to the entire court, to get a murderer who killed a young man, out on bail just so he can sort of flee and go back into society, a total sort of miscarriage of justice here. So again, it's very interesting to see Saul getting the cold shoulder here, a sort of continuation of that. Again, during the scene, we see him sort of getting his calls on his earpiece here, which sets up, the necessity for having him have to have that office that we saw him have in the plot of Breaking Bad. Again, really great scene here in Act Three, where we see the nail salon just absolutely packed. Unbelievable for sure. Just the word is out. And again, wasn't expecting this. It was sort of displayed to us in the trailer for season six, but I definitely didn't think this was an actual quote. But when Saul goes into the nail salon and says, "Who's here to see Saul Goodman?" and everyone raises their hand, and then Spooge comes around the corner and says, "You're the guy." The word is definitely out about how you know Saul represented this cartel guy and who probably everyone knows killed a guy, and he was able to get him out on bail and have him basically hop bail to Mexico and have his freedom. So all the sort of Albuquerque criminal underclass wants to work with Saul Goodman after this. So definitely a sort of interesting scene here. Again, it's like I wonder if Saul is even sort of taken aback here by how much the word is out here, and sort of I wonder what sort of internal grappling he's doing. It's sort of the ends justifying the means, and how it's sort of not really his responsibility, I suppose, in the big picture. If the system failed and things like that. If he was able to get his client out, that the system didn't sort of, you know, wasn't able to, keep him in jail. So I think he even said as much. Yeah, when he was talking to the detective in the first episode, as well as the other district attorney, about how you have all this research department. You have, oh, crap, is the connection unstable? Can you guys still hear me? Is it cutting out? Am I back? So the connection was unstable. Can everyone hear? Your audio is bad. Shit. Is it better now? The connection was bad. I apologize. M4, the audio is cutting out. It's choppy, but it's fine now. All right, I apologize. Hold on. Let me check something real quick. I'll be right back. I apologize, guys. Technical difficulties. Yeah, the setup is in the book. What are you gonna do? So yeah, where was I? But anyway, yeah, getting into it. Yeah, just the sort of word being out in the system failing. Pretty interesting for sure. So, but anyway, yeah, sort of this sort of scene sort of setting up the scene that we had to have at the end of this episode. Laggier than two go. Man, that's funny. Your stream is lagging. Damn, my bad. This sucks. I wasn't expecting that. It's lagging. Crap. All right, I'm gonna power through this. I apologize, guys. I really apologize if this is bad quality here. Unfortunately, I hope the actual video comes up better. I apologize if it's lagging, but yeah. The anyway, the final sort of scene that we see here is this meeting that I discussed with Kim and Mike Ehrmantraut, where we find out that Mike was the one who's tailing Kim Wexler because it was under the. Please don't make it sound worse than this. It's good right now. It's fine. All right, I apologize, guys. Again, really got to sort of sort this out beforehand. But anyway, this sort of final meeting that we have here between Mike and Kim, where it's revealed to us that Mike was the one tailing them at the end of the second episode of season two. Excuse the end of the second episode of season six of Better Call Saul, and just an unbelievable scene here where we got to see sort of Kim Wexler and Mike Ehrmantraut interact here. I mean, unbelievably, didn't expect it. It's really great. It's such an awesome thing to finally see sort of two characters interact that we never saw interact before in the plot of Better Call Saul before this. And when it's finally revealed to us that Mike had been tailing Saul and Kim because they were worried that Lalo Salamanca would basically try to get in contact with anyone who sort of was involved with the sort of, where the plot went at the end of this, season 5. Just absolutely unbelievable here. And of so many different components here, I feel like I have to make like an entire video about this one scene, but just an unbelievable scene here where it was Mike all along. Yeah, good call, Dottie. Definitely, I thought Mike was definitely totally preoccupied with Nacho Varga, but Gus is definitely capable of multitasking. And I guess, he definitely wanted to, it's definitely revealed to us in the final act of this episode, just the true level of paranoia here that Gus Fring is experiencing, but just unbelievable for sure. This final meeting scene here, where basically, it's revealed to Kim that Lalo Salamanca is still alive, and just an unbelievable scene here, and sort of her asking Mike, "Why are you telling me this and not Saul?" Basically saying how Mike is basically saying how she's of more sort of sound constitution, of sound mind, not someone who would totally flip out. And it's pretty interesting. It almost seems like a callback to season 2 of Breaking Bad, with just the absolute fear that Saul exhibited in the desert about, Lalo Salamanca sending men to kill him, which he thought was happening. I mean, just there's an absolute fear that Saul clearly has of Lalo, and Kim has it as well. I mean, we could definitely see the scenes that were teased at the end after this episode, with Kim sort of bolstering the door with a chair underneath the door handle. So again, really sort of interesting scene here, and also really awesome scene here where Kim even recognizes Mike from being the parking attendant guy back in season 1 of Better Call Saul. And I definitely remember people talking about this on Reddit about how, like, wouldn't people notice like Mike, wouldn't Kim notice Mike from working at the parking attendant booth, if they ever interacted in the plot of a Better Call Saul, because she drove through that gate all the time. Supposedly, she would have recognized the parking attendant guy who was always there, over the course of season 1 of Better Call Saul. So really great scene here. Just the absolute fear that Kim is exhibiting, where the sort of one sort of aspect of this plot where she knows, who's tailing her, and Mike basically saying, you don't have to worry about them, they're not going to mess with you, they're actually trying to protect you, and hopefully, push won't come to shove and you and your husband can just live your normal lives. So again, absolutely amazing scene here, which sort of foreshadows where Kim's head of this episode for sure. And I can't even really do this scene justice here. I mean, just an unbelievable scene between Mike and Kim. And yeah, it's sort of that checks sort of one of the names off the box here of that sort of thing about what two characters have never had a scene together. So we can finally check Kim and Mike off that list here. So unbelievable scene here where we got to see that sort of revelation revealed to Kim Wexler. So, and I definitely agree with Mike. I don't think Saul would have been as stoic as Kim following the revelation of this information. And Kim is just an absolutely stoic character I've seen over the course of 5 seasons plus 4 episodes of Better Call Saul, compared to Saul Goodman, who is definitely not as stoic as Kim Wexler, someone who definitely breaks down much more. Kim is capable of breaking down as well, for sure. She's not a robot, but way more stoic than someone like Saul Goodman. But anyway, yeah, finally getting to I guess the very last act here of this episode, the fourth and final act. I guess before we do that, I guess kind of check it out here. They didn't even drag out Nacho's plot line. They know how to make a show. Yeah, I mean, I was surprised how quickly that sort of plot culminated as well in the third episode. I did not expect that whatsoever, Giuseppe, not at all. So Gus is gonna die this season, just Dan. That yeah, I don't know about that, but going Skinny Pete in prison again. Talked about that in my previous stream. I'm not really sure, Justin. It's possible. It's definitely possible based on the canon of Breaking Bad. Again, I'm not really sure what they're going to do with the story here, but definitely, I guess, sort of before we get into that final act here. I mean, I guess it does kind of have to do with that. So maybe we will kind of get into the final act here. I was going to talk about Lalo Salamanca's lack of appearance for the third straight episode. But before we do that, let's get into the final act here of this episode, where we see Gus Fring return home from the day at Los Pollos Hermanos that was teased in one of the very first teasers for season 6 of Better Call Saul. And a pretty interesting shot here for sure. We got to see Gus Fring's house, I believe, for the first time since season 4 of Better Call Saul, when Dr. Maureen Bruckner went over to visit with him to sort of discuss the progress of Hector Salamanca after the time lapse montage scene that occurred in the episode entitled Something Stupid, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And what's interesting about this scene is we've seen Gus Fring's house before, I think twice in the plot of Breaking Bad on the inside at least, and then once at least on the outside with Walter White when he attempted to murder Gus Fring in season 4. And we saw it once as well in season 4 of Better Call Saul, but we have never seen a scene inside of Gus Fring's house outside of his kitchen. That's the only place we got to see of Gus Fring's house, either the kitchen or the exterior. And it's pretty interesting because the very first 2 shots we got here were of the exterior and then of the kitchen, of course. But following this, we then saw Gus Fring return into his bedroom for the first time. We never saw that. And, before we get into the big reveal here of this very final act of this episode, definitely sort of just, an unbelievable sort of, rigid, like, what's the word? I'm just so rigid how Gus Fring is a total exemplification of his character in this episode for sure. How would you rank these 4 episodes from best to least, JoJo? I mean, I feel like it's kind of a loaded question right there, man. I mean, I've enjoyed all of them. I mean, this one definitely didn't have the sort of, the person tied to the railroad tracks like the previous episode did, but it was definitely a plot development episode for sure. And I don't feel like it's appropriate to rank them all right now. Maybe I'll rank them when all 13 here. It was definitely more of a plot development episode for sure. I mean, I was thinking about this as well. It's like, how do you follow, episode 3? I was thinking about it. It's like, the sort of, what's the term I'm looking for? That sort of cliche in stand-up comedy where you don't want to follow like the number one comedian. Like, to use a Better Call Saul example, you wouldn't want to go after Bill Burr at like an open mic or something like that. If you're doing like an open mic and then Bill Burr just stops by and goes on before you and bumps you and then you go, you don't want to do that. That's a bad place to be. So I really don't think this episode, I don't know what sort of expectations people had of it, but it was definitely, compared to the third one, it was definitely going to seem, I guess, not as, as much pomp and circumstance. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, there were a lot of callbacks here to Breaking Bad for sure. A lot of Easter egg references and a lot of plot development. I love that scene with Kim and Mike, that reveal, and it was just a sort of continuation of just how much plot is being displayed to us, yet the plot is progressing so quickly. So yeah. But anyway, getting back into this act, we see Gus Fring, and the big reveal here is, with him being so rigid, a sort of exemplification of Gus Fring's personality. We see him with this absolute paranoia, with this bulletproof vest, and maybe the paranoia is not unwarranted, with having this person, Lalo Salamanca, who definitely wants him dead, and him knowing that he's still alive. Wearing this bulletproof vest and sort of changing his clothes, and we see him going down to the basement of what we think to do his laundry, and it's then revealed to us that I guess Gus Fring had this hidden compartment that connects this house to the sort of watch house, um, that's next door or through this tunnel. And this tunnel shot was just unbelievable. I remember this shot was teased to us in the trailer, and I thought, what is this, a walkway to the super lab? I definitely did not, expect this scene to display to us this secret tunnel that Gus Fring had into this house that connects, his house to that house, because, obviously he wants it to be a secret and he doesn't want people to see him walking into that house, his neighbors and stuff like that. So, but anyway, just an unbelievable scene here. And you have to imagine that, this scene here of this underground, I mean, this tunnel here, it had to take years to build. This is not something you can build in, in a couple of days or something of that effect. So this has definitely been something that Gus Fring has planned for a long time. Now, how long he's had this sort of surveillance system there and all these sort of bodyguards and stuff like this, we don't know. Ermintrout's dialogue in the scene, Gus Fring is definitely ramping up any protection that he had beforehand for sure. With a very sort of funny dialogue here where Gus Fring says that man that one of your men that you put inside of Los Pollos Hermanos as security, a sort of protection for Gus Fring. You said that he had experience, as a short order cook. And Mike, I think Mike said like 3 years working at McDonald's in college or something to that effect. And then Gus Fring basically said he's not up to Los Pollos standards. And Mike basically saying we're stretched thin as it is here. We have men everywhere here, protecting you in any place that, Lalo Salamanca could theoretically show up. And pretty interesting scene here as well, where despite, Mike basically clearly being told by Gus Fring that Lalo is still alive, it's almost as if Mike has a little bit of reservation here now with him just, not showing up for 3 episodes. Again, I'm not sure exactly how much time has elapsed in amount of weeks or months since the very start of season 6 of Better Call Saul inside of this specific timeline. But it was even kind of interesting to sort of Mike to say how like the whole world thinks he's dead, and how sort of him almost thinking that, we don't have any proof. The only sort of evidence that you have, which made you change your perspective, despite, the federality report of the charred body and everything, was that look that Hector Salamanca gave you. And it was even kind of interesting here to sort of see Mike Ehrmantraut sort of, I don't want to say denial, but definitely sort of reservation and questioning here, just the absolute paranoia that Gus Fring is experiencing right now, just taking extreme measures to protect himself. I mean, he's even wearing this bulletproof vest right now with all these security guards around him, or bodyguards, or henchmen, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, just the absolute level of fear. And sort of before we sort of get into the final sort of bit here with Jimmy and Kim, it is actually kind of interesting here, Doug. We have not seen Lalo Salamanca in 3 consecutive episodes of season 6 of Better Call Saul. And I was actually going back, and I definitely remember there were 3 episode stretches over the course of, I don't remember what season exactly. It was maybe season 3 and or 4, or maybe 2, but there were definitely 3 episodes in a row before where Nacho Varga did not appear in Better Call Saul for 3 straight episodes, but he was definitely a very big part of the storyline, but definitely was not expecting Lalo Salamanca to not appear in the episodes 2 through 4, 3 in a row after the first episode. So, it's actually kind of interesting. I was actually kind of just thinking about the absolute fear that sort of Gus Fring is exhibiting here, and then Kim Wexler will exhibit in the very last scene of this episode, well, that I'll talk about after this. But it kind of makes me remind me of that Office quote about that episode about the snowball fight with Dwight and Jim, where sort of the snowman scene at the very end, where Dwight says, "Turns out the best snowball isn't a snowball at all; it's actually fear." You know, it's so true. Like the fear is the worst of it, as Walter White even said about his cancer diagnosis, I believe, in season 2 of Breaking Bad. So just this fear that Lalo was able to instill in people like Gus Fring and Kim and eventually Saul Goodman, even though he's nowhere to be found. Like, who knows where he is? And who knows that maybe he's even doing this on purpose if he's sort of staying away for a long amount of time here. I mean, I guess he could sort of live on the lam. I mean, Lalo seems like someone who does have the resources to sort of be able to live the rest of his life after being able to fake his own death, somewhere in this world, who knows, in South America or in Europe or Australia or something to that effect. But he definitely has some sort of plan here for sure. So, you know, it's definitely the fear here is the worst part of it for Gus Fring for sure, as well as Kim. So, but anyway, yeah, after this scene here, we finally get to the very last scene of this episode where, again, definitely a quick advancement of the plot here where we finally see Saul, and thank goodness, in my opinion, looking at this empty office, which will eventually turn into the law offices of Saul Goodman and Associates. And, we see a very upbeat Saul Goodman here sort of telling, Kim the necessity behind all this just based on the pact, sort of nails Salon. Of course, not revealing specific details here, but definitely sort of insinuating a lot, and Kim kind of saying, "Oh, bad day," and Saul saying, "No, this is a great day. The word is out. I have I have all these clients. This is everything I've ever wanted. The word is out. I'm becoming this, great lawyer. Et cetera, et cetera." And following this, Saul basically saying, "What do you think?" And Kim's basically, I think Kim might have called it a shithole specifically, but basically saying, "It's perfect. It's right by the courthouse. It's right by the bail bond road. You can't, it's just in a perfect location. It's just kind of screams Saul Goodman here. I'm sort of editorializing, but she definitely, that comment I talked about this at the very beginning of the episode about don't move the toilet. I'm not exactly sure what that's. I feel like that's a direct reference to something in the plot of Better Call Saul, but it's sort of slipping my mind here, for sure. But I'll definitely have to go back and see exactly what that was a reference to. But again, another Easter egg reference here, where I believe someone brings up Taco Cabeza, and then I think Kim says, speaking of, or Saul might have said, speaking of Taco Cabeza, and then Kim's like, "Of course, I'm starving. Let's go eat." And I believe Taco Cabeza is direct reference to Jesse Pinkman, back at least talking about how most deals he ever did, the drug deals before he was with Walter White, happened at Taco Cabeza, not at some abandoned junkyard. Basically Jesse saying this is the sort of, criminals, ideal of what a drug meeting is, like it's something they'd see on like an episode of The Sopranos or something like that. But anyway, and then finally, when they're walking away, we see a very sort of, blissfully ignorant Saul Goodman, very upbeat and positive, having a great day here. And of course, we see Kim look over her shoulder, with all the different sounds that are happening, because she knows that Lalo Salamanca is still alive, and that blissful ignorance is no longer with her. And even the ignorance of the plausible deniability of who these people might be following her and for what reason, this is definitely not what Kim wanted to hear for sure. That Lalo Salamanca was still alive, and that he may be coming back for some retribution based on what happened at the end of season 5 of Better Call Saul. So yeah, unbelievable episode here for sure. Definitely a plot development episode. Again, hard to follow the episode of episode 3 with Nacho's death for sure. But yeah, and sort of getting into the scenes that were teased in the next episode, we definitely saw a quick shot of the super lab here for sure. I talked about that more in my previous live stream, and we definitely also that shot of Kim putting the door underneath the chair underneath the door handle, just exhibiting that absolute fear. Was just unbelievable. Again, I think we see Saul stay open for business. So again, like you do wonder, like if we're going to see a very quick progression to the law offices of Saul Goodman and Associates being open right away in the 5th episode. Again, I don't know. Again, I feel like there just isn't enough time to have this very slow sort of, thought out sort of reveal of this. The fact that there's only 9 episodes left, for goodness sake. But yeah, really looking forward to this next episode for sure. Kind of seeing where everything stands here. Hope we see Lalo Salamanca again at some point. I know we will. I mean, we saw him in that black tie formal wear looking all dapper in all those teasers. So I really don't know what's going on here. Yeah, the again, I apologize for the butchering of this name, the Sobieski Lalo in Germany. I've heard a lot of people allude to that as well, and really sort of, looking forward to where everything goes here for sure. Kind of curious to see why as well that meeting with Spooge there was no sort of behind this. You thought for sure we'd have the sort of behind the scenes of that meeting, and of course, due to the fact that no specific details about Saul Goodman having Spooge as a client besides Spooge were revealed to us in the plot of Breaking Bad. The plot, any plot, is really open to the discretion of the creators to do whatever they want with it. I was really wondering if they're going to give him an actual name as well, but he stuck with Spooge again. A very sort of interesting nickname, very sort of interesting for sure to put it lightly. But yeah, to find the proof, so Sobieski for sure. Again, I still don't know what the heck is going on with that. I swear I thought he was talking about Nacho, but clearly he had something much more bigger in mind. Maybe, Paul Soro, that could be right. It could have just been, like, the toilet just sitting in the middle of the, empty like, the sort of the toilet in the middle of the waiting room, in the worst possible location. I think that could be the reference for sure, so yeah, Lucifer, I wish the plot had something to do with Lalo and Lydia, but unfortunately, she's not gonna appear in season 6 of Better Call Saul, as I talked about in a previous video, unfortunately, so I really that would be great in my opinion, so do you think Lalo killed Tomas in Breaking Bad, Giuseppe? I don't know. No, I don't think so. That definitely I think the rival dealers killed him for sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure basically after they said, no more children, I'm pretty sure they kind of took it on their own accord to sort of kill that loose end. I don't think Lalo had anything to do with that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the rival dealers just took him out as a loose end here when Gus said no more children. So who is Tomas? Yeah, Breaking Bad reference, man. Way, way, way back. So So yeah, man, I enjoyed this one a lot. Again, I talked about this, and people sort of alluded to this about again, it was I knew it was going to be so hard to follow episode 3. I knew I'm like, how are they going to top this? I mean, what big sort of reveal was gonna happen in this episode? And while there couldn't really be a big sort of scene like with not what happened to Nacho at the end of episode 3, I really enjoyed that scene of Kim and Mike. Was not expecting that at all. That was a very nice surprise here for sure, and I really enjoyed this episode. So can't wait to see what happens again. A continuation of the sort of shunning of Saul Goodman, sort of really pushing him down the road of being that person who kind of advocates for criminals first, and basically becoming a criminal more or less. Being a sort of criminal lawyer instead of a criminal lawyer, as Jesse Pinkman said in the plot of Breaking Bad. So really sort of setting that up. Again, sort of seeing Kim Lecter's absolute fears here. With Lalo still being alive. Really sort of interesting to see sort of Gus Fring's paranoia here, and even Mike starting to question the premise as well about Lalo being alive in the first place. And yeah, also very kind of cool to see a very fast-paced continuation to the to and associates being set up right away with even a shot of Francesca being displayed to us in the next episode teaser, as well as if I'm not mistaken, as well as Saul saying open for business as well. And of course, too, yeah, I could almost forget. I think we have the final confrontation here as well. Again, the plot has to move quickly. I mean, we only have 3 episodes left until the mid-season break. So far yet so close, and we definitely see the confrontation teased of Clifford Maine calling out Howard Hamlin after seeing what he saw outside of that restaurant in this episode. So again, really sort of it'll be interesting to see the sort of the confrontation that ensues there, and sort of Howard's reaction to all of this. Because I mean, Clifford's going to sound absolutely crazy, you know. Like, of course, I did not do any of those things. I have an alibi. I was at my therapy session when you saw that, even though it was my exact car. Did someone steal my car? Like, how did that happen? Wait, someone who looked exactly like me, who was wearing my suit and had a spray tan, was driving my car? I mean, I feel like Howard's too smart of a character to just sort of, lay down and so really interesting to sort of see what happens there, and just the sort of continued fast pace of season 6 of Better Call Saul. So Yeah, Gus had us fooled about his life. Yeah, you do wonder, Nick, if that tunnel must have existed there for years and how, the sort of again, I think Mike sort of insinuated that the security team had been bolstered because they were running very thin to sort of quote his dialogue. But I definitely think that it's kind of interesting when Walter White and maybe even when Jesse Pinkman and Dr. Bruckner were having dinner with Gus Fring, they definitely weren't alone. They were definitely people I didn't know we saw cameras shots of cameras inside of excuse me, Gus Fring's house, but there are definitely cameras on the outside. So, Giuseppe, yeah, Santiago. Yeah, I talked about that in my previous video as well. I don't think we're gonna. It's impossible to tell everything about Santiago. There's so much backstory. I even talked about it in like season 5, how they interjected that entirely different backstory about with Peter Schuler being that man who saved them and Santiago. I mean, there's just too much. I mean, I think it's impossible to tell everything. We'll see though for sure. Is there a teaser for the next episode? Yes, it was revealed on the television broadcast. Alpha, can't say that name. Alferg. It was teased. I'm sure it will be posted to the Better Call Saul Twitter page and their YouTube channel pretty soon. So yeah, really enjoy the teaser. Howard Hamlin spinoff. I like the way he talks. Jeff Flynn. I'm not too opposed to any spinoff for sure. So is Giancarlo directing an episode? I think so. Don't quote me on that. I think he is. Yeah, I know Ray Seahorn directed this one. I think I saw that. So, and yeah, I really enjoyed it for sure. Beef testosterone. I really enjoyed the setup episode. I can't get over that scene with Mike. Again, wasn't expecting that scene. Definitely thought we'd see more of the actual see the conversation between Saul and Spooge. Thought Wendy might have a slightly bigger role, but great to see that cameo. Irrespective, a lot of setup here, with everything I just discussed, and can't wait to see what happens. So the Wendy spinoff, Nick Russ. I'm not so sure about that one, but that's funny, man. Yeah, John Williams, the whole plot with sort of just buying Lalo's story. Again, I feel like there's a lot here. There's so much to sort of, it would be sort of a bait and switch, I think, at the end, because yeah, you could address the allegations, but at the end of the day, we know that Gus Fring stays in the good graces of the cartel. So we could go down that road theoretically, but we know that Gus Fring is going to come out of it unscathed because if I feel like if they ever figured out about that hit on Lalo Salamanca, they would have killed him, and they never do. He stays in the good graces of the cartel. When we first see Juan Bolsa and Hector talk to him in season 3 of Breaking Bad, Gus Fring is in charge of the territory in the north. So he has a very prominent role in the cartel. So, I think they're just going to kind of buy the story, John. I really don't think we have time, unfortunately, to break down every little detail. And even me, like, I swear, I thought we were going to see a more behind the scenes backstory of how Lalo sort of faked his own death. I mean, we know in the end how he did it with the sort of man who looked just like him in the dental records and killing him, but we didn't get a step by step process, and I don't think we ever will at this pace with the story already progressing so much. And a lot of things are just sort of going to be implied or sort of not outwardly displayed. I mean, to this day, we don't know the step by step process by which Walter White managed to poison Brock. So again, I think they're not gonna be able to tell every single little detail here, but I don't think they have to. I mean, the story's just been absolutely unbelievable. So, do you think Don Eladio is gonna show back up again? I think at least once, random person. I think he will. I think it makes sense for sure. Hopefully, there's an Eladio episode. Yeah, I think we'll see. I think it's very possible we'll see a shot. Well, not a shot, but a scene back at that hacienda. I think it's very possible in Giuseppe as well as random person for sure. Eladio was in the season 5 finale. He's definitely someone whose weight has fluctuated as well. I mean, not to sort of undermine that actor, but they were just talking about that in my last live stream about the sort of the different way the characters look. Again, I talked about that. The characters look a little bit different from when they did in the plot of Breaking Bad, but I really so unbelievable that even the sort of difference in the appearance of characters, I really haven't even noticed it. I've just been so immersed in the actual story. So Wendy never got her root beer. Maybe behind the scenes though. Maybe Saul ended up giving it to her. We just didn't see her take it back to her room or something like that. Brian Ice, yeah. So that was funny for sure. Definitely another callback to the plot of Breaking Bad with Wendy getting her root beer from the vending machine for sure. So Giuseppe, I trust the writers a lot because they're geniuses, but there's still so many people that haven't seen. Yeah, like Tortuga Tuga Emilio. Yeah. I think we could see all those people theoretically for sure. I mean, Emilio. I guess the thing with Emilio, I feel like his storyline has kind of progressed to the sort of finality of where it was when we first met him in the plot of Breaking Bad. So I don't know how much more there is with Emilio, but I definitely love to see a character like Tortuga for sure. And I definitely even speculated, is the next episode of season 6 called Black and Blue, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe one after that? But people did point out that Black and Blue is with the English translation of the episode Negro y Azul that we saw in season 2 of Breaking Bad. And I believe that was the very first episode we ever saw Tortuga in the plot of Breaking Bad was Negro y Azul. So that's a sort of a subtle sort of reference to Tortuga, Danny Trejo appearing in that episode. That'd be pretty awesome, in my opinion. If we got to see Tortuga in that in coming up this season, I would really love to see that. So I think Gus has always been wearing that vest and ankle holster. That's an interesting theory, Beast Testosterone. I hadn't considered that, that he was wearing it the entire time. I don't know if I noticed that. I have to go back. I feel like you could notice wearing a bulletproof vest because I remember when Saul met with Walter White outside car wash in season 5 of Breaking Bad. Walt said to him, "Are you wearing a bulletproof vest?" I feel like it'd be kind of noticeable, but that's definitely an interesting theory that he wore it ever since. This happened with Lalo, where he was wearing it the entire time. I never even considered that beef testosterone. I always just considered he was just wearing it after what happened with Lalo. That's an interesting point there. I hadn't considered that. So yeah, it's true. He wasn't wearing one in box cutter though, clip with kick flip demon when he took off his shirt. We saw him wearing his undershirt. So that is a good point. For sure. So yeah, I think the King 77891. I think this episode was a little bit on the shorter side. So yeah. And yet Giuseppe, we have not seen Gene as well so far, through the first 4 episodes. I definitely think we'll get a Gene episode. Uh Niece. Damn, I apologize if the sound damn, this setup is unfortunate. Denise, if the sound's cutting out, I apologize if it's sort of lagging. Again, it says my connection is good. Uh I'm sorry if the connection's cutting out, so damn, yeah, maybe it's cutting out. I'm not sure if it's not the best, so definitely let me know. So it's good. We can hear. Okay, Giuseppe, that's good. So yeah, again, we don't. I thought maybe it would be revealed to us that Gus Fring has a family. That's actually an interesting point. One to Vargas. I talked about that in a previous video about how Gus Fring said that kids won't eat it. Sort of piece of dialogue when referring to his Chilean fish stew. But again, no sort of any inclination that he has a family whatsoever. So I definitely think he could have just been trying to manipulate Walter White. I've seen a lot of people sort of use that as an explanation for that dialogue. So there's proving and there's knowing. Yeah, Bill Oakley, bitch. That's a good point. I talked about that earlier. Green lizard balls. That was a great quote there. Where even though they can't so man. So yeah. So again, really great episode here. If the stream's sort of lagging, I think I may call it here. But I'm listening, watching on my phone. Okay, Denise. Oh yeah, you said it was cutting out. I apologize. I'm sorry. People were complaining a little bit earlier about the quality. I'm pretty damn new to the streaming thing. This is a pretty low tech setup here. I apologize. So I think the last time I think the stream like it wasn't cutting out as much, but the picture quality was way worse. So Anton, how do you think Walt and Jesse would return? Again, I talked about that in a couple of my previous videos again, but after seeing what we've seen so far, again, my speculation might be completely wrong, Justin Cruz. So, yeah. So again, really, I'm kind of running out of superlatives for this episode, and I just really enjoyed it at the end of the day. And like I said, never could have topped the episode 3, but I really think for what it was an absolutely great episode. So yeah, I'm probably gonna call it here, guys. I really appreciate everyone for tuning in. I loved talking about this stream, sort of giving my talking about this episode in the stream, giving my initial thoughts here. And I apologize if it cut out. I'll after I upload this video, I'll see if if it kind of cuts out there as well, or if the quality, at least for the upload, is not all crappy and was kind of cutting out. I really apologize. I really got to work on that for sure. But yeah, I appreciate it. Green Lizard Balls, funny name there. But yeah, so I'm gonna end it here. Looking forward to making some videos about this episode in the coming days for sure. Looking forward to the next episode. Absolutely, gonna try to get the quality of these streams better and better. And I really appreciate for everyone for tuning in. So I'll see you guys around. Looking forward to the next episode, and have a great night.